The House Beyond Sundown. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday. No return address, just my name typed neatly in faded ink and a stamp from a nowhere town in Florida, Litchfield, population unreadable, postmark barely there. Inside, a single photograph, a crumbling two-story house standing in a field of yellowed grass. No fence, no path, nothing but flat land, and the hint of cypress trees leaning at the edge of the frame. It might have been taken in the 70s, maybe earlier. The color had drained from the print, leaving everything in washed-out sepia. But it was the window on the second floor that held me. There was a shadow there, subtle, human-shaped, vague as breath on glass. I turned the photo over, written in the same shaky type as the envelope, the set of coordinates. By Friday afternoon, I was there. Middle of nowhere Florida is somehow flatter than you think. The heat is thick, insects buzz like static in your ears, and the roads are little more than sun-bleached scars on the land. The house was there, exactly as in the photo. Gray wood siding stripped by time, one shutter hanging like a crooked tooth, the second-story window staring down at me like it had been expecting someone. I parked my rental on the dirt path and walked the last 100 feet. The porch groaned under my weight but didn't give. The door was unlocked, not even latched properly. Inside, the air smelled like dry wood and old pine needles. Dust motes drifted in lazy spirals. The place was empty. Completely. I swept through it room by room, warped floorboards, yellowing wallpaper, a dead bird in the fireplace. Nothing out of place, and nothing that said ghosts. The second floor was more of the same, peeling paint, silence, and that window. I stood there a moment, where the shadow had been. The view from that spot overlooked the field and, in the distance, the endless tree line. Still, I'd learned not to trust silence, so I left a camera, fixed on that window. Night vision, wide angle, motion sensitive. I didn't expect it to catch much. Ghost stories don't always show up for the camera. I drove into Litchfield as the sun dipped behind the trees. The only motel in town was a squat brick building with a sign that said vacancy, even if it hadn't been lit in years. Inside, the front desk was manned by a girl barely old enough to drive, flipping through a paperback and blowing a pink bubble with her gum. "Evening," I said. She looked up, blinked twice. "You're not from here." "I'm not," I agreed. "Silas Holloway. Room for one." She checked her ledger. "Not a computer in sight. Room 3's got AC that kind of works." She slid me a key on a sunflower keychain. "You here for the fishing?" "Not exactly." I pulled out the photo and placed it gently on the desk, shadow side up. "You recognize this place?" She peered at it, tilted her head. "Nah, never seen it." "Looks like every house out past the creek, though. My grandpa says half of them were built before Florida was even dry." "No one lives there now. No one lives in a lot of places around here," she said, shrugging. "You're probably just seeing things. That shadow looks like a curtain." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. "Thanks." I barely slept. The motel walls were thin, the AC groaned like a dying animal, and my brain kept playing that image on repeat. The window, the shadow, the silence. By morning, I was back at the house. Nothing had changed. Still empty, still ordinary. My camera stood where I'd left it, untouched. I brought it back to the motel, plugged it into my laptop, and watched. The first few hours were exactly what I'd seen myself, sunlight slanting through the dusty air, shadows moving across the floor, the occasional bug crawling into frame. And then the sun hit the horizon. Right as the last ray slipped below the edge of the window, the screen blinked. Not to black, but white. Static. Not snow. Not camera malfunction. It was clean white noise, like the feed was still there, but the world it recorded had vanished. The timestamp kept ticking, 7 hours of white screen. Then, as the sun rose again, the room faded slowly back into view, like fog retreating from a mirror. First shadows, then dust, then floorboards. My camera still stood. I replayed it twice, 3 times. Same thing. Vanished sunset. returned sunrise. I sat back in the plastic motel chair and stared at the ceiling. Well, that was new. I spent the day in Litchfield. I asked at the diner, the bait shop, even the church thrift store. Young people shrugged. Old people went still. One man shook his head and muttered something that sounded like wasn't meant to last. Town history? I asked. He just said, "Dead don't like to be followed," and turned away. Eventually, I made my way to the local archives. One room, tucked in the back of the public library, overseen by a retired schoolteacher named Miss Priscilla, who wore a dress the color of key lime pie and had the memory of a hawk. She was willing to help, though. Something about my name, maybe she'd read one of my pieces, or maybe she just liked the company. "What exactly are you looking for, Mr. Holloway?" "An old house, far end of the fields. Coordinates put it about a mile east of County Line Road. Been abandoned a long time." She tilted her head, then nodded slowly. "That'd be the Everston house." "Everston?" "Used to be homestead. Late 1800s. Not much left of it now." "Anything in the papers?" "Oh Lord, yes," she said, already walking toward a dusty cabinet. "That family was half curse, half myth even back then." She laid 3 yellowing newspapers in front of me. The first was dated 1892. The headline, "Wife of Local Builder Declared Missing. Vanished at Dusk." The second, 1905. 3 children lost on Everston property, claimed by fog. And finally, 1921. Town declares property abandoned, no living kin found. The details were spare, even for old papers. The Everston family had moved in from Georgia, built the house with their own hands, lived off the land. But the wife, Maribel Everston, disappeared one evening during a summer storm. No witnesses. No sign. Over the years, strange things kept happening. Visitors gone missing. Lights seen at night when no one was there. Whole chunks of memory lost by those who stayed too long. The town declared the land uninhabitable and let it rot. "What happened to the rest of the family?" I asked. "Some say they left," Miss Priscilla said. "Some say they stayed, just stopped showing up." "Any local legends?" She smiled faintly. "We don't call them legends here. Just things better left alone." I returned to the house one last time. This time, I waited until dusk. The air was still. A cardinal chirped once and fell silent. I stood in the second-floor room, camera off, notebook in hand. The sun crept low, slow, and honey-colored. I stared out the window, feeling like a man about to cross into something nameless. And then, just like on the tape, the last light disappeared. The world didn't go dark. It just wasn't anymore. One moment, I was standing in a dusty old room, and the next, I was nowhere. No walls, no window, no sky, just white. Blank, infinite white. No sound. Not even the buzz of blood in my ears. Like I'd been folded into a piece of paper and slipped between chapters. I didn't move. I didn't speak. And then, a whisper. Barely audible. Not behind me or beside me, but through me. I couldn't understand the words, only the feeling. Loneliness. Waiting. A presence so patient it had forgotten time. Then, just as suddenly, color seeped back in. Shadows returned. The floor creaked. The world remade itself like breath returning to lungs. I checked my watch. Hours had passed. It was morning again. I left quietly. The house didn't stop me. Back in town, I didn't ask more questions. I didn't need to. The story was clear enough. In that way old stories often are, not in facts, but in warnings. The Everston house wasn't haunted. It was left behind. Some places don't hold ghosts. They hold moments. Echoes of loss that never stopped ringing. A kind of grief so vast it took the whole world with it after sunset. A place where the sun is the only thread tying it to the living. I mailed the photograph back to myself without a return address, just to see if it would arrive again someday. Maybe to remind me, maybe to warn. I kept the footage, of course, filed it under strange. But I won't go back, not because I'm afraid. Silas Holloway doesn't scare easy, but because some stories aren't meant to be solved. Some stories just wait. And they remember you long after you've left. If this sort of thing keeps you up at night, you might want to subscribe. There's always more buried in the archives. And if there's a story you're looking for, drop it in the comments. Odds are, I've already got a file with your name on it, just haven't dusted it off yet.